Greetings, citizens. Hey you beautiful, creepy little human being. You, welcome to my channel and welcome to today's Morbid makeup video. I'm so happy we can meet like this. I'm so happy that somehow we were able to find each other on this beautiful little earthly rotation. My name is Brittany or BRATTERSTEIN, whichever you prefer, and today we're going to be talking about a woman named Maria. Maria either had the last name of Barbari or Barbella, depending on what source you read. It is an older case, so it gets a little lost in translation, but Maria was the first woman sentenced to die by electric chair in Sing Sing prison after she murdered her boyfriend in a very gnarly and very public manner. But before we get started, please make sure to join the Brat Pack by subscribing and ringing the bell. I put out a new Morbid makeup video every single week, and I would love to hang out with you. Yes, specifically you. Join us. Do it, one of us. Thank you. Okay, now that we're done with that business, the story. So Maria's story is one that I learned about when I was in high school because I got this book around that time called Crime and Punishment, the Illustrated Crime Encyclopedia. It's like this little volume. I'll put a photo of me with it to show you what I'm talking about. And Maria's story was in it, and I read it when I was a little wee lass, and I was like, whoa. And it was really intense, and it stuck with me. And since it stuck with me for so long, I thought perhaps you would like to hear about it as well. In addition to being very interesting and very old, it's also really underreported on YouTube, so I was like, okay, this is the type of thing that I would like to see, so I'm going to put it out into the world, hence this video. So come, gather around and let me tell you the story of Maria, the first woman to ever be sentenced to be put to death by the electric chair after murdering her boyfriend in a very public and very gnarly fashion. Talk about a woman scorned. Okay, so we're first going to jump into our handy dandy little time machine and head on back to the tail end of the 19th century when Maria was born. Maria Barbella, often referred to as Maria Barbari, but we're just going to call her Maria. Well, Maria was born on October 24th, 1868, making her a Scorpio. Maria was born to parents Filomena, her mother, and Michael, her father, and her family grew up in an area called Ferrandina in southern Italy. When Maria was in her mid-20s, her and her family actually immigrated to the US and settled in New York, where they stayed in a little area that was referred to as Little Italy due to the number of Italian immigrants who had immigrated on over and built a little community in that area. Maria and her family settled nicely into their new lives and their new home, but they didn't have a lot of money, you know, new immigrants over to a place where they were unfamiliar. So Maria had to take a job at a factory in Lower Manhattan as a seamstress, and it was really hard work. It was even referred to as a sweatshop, but Maria did anything she could to help keep her and her family's heads above water in this new world. So after being in New York for about a year, Maria met herself a man. This man's name was Dominico Cataldo, and Dominico was a early 30s-year-old man who was from the same area in Italy that Maria and her family had been from, and he, immigrated over as well, but he was doing financially way better than Maria and her family. He was well established, he spoke English, and he actually owned his own shoe shine shop that was just down the street from the factory where Maria worked, so she had to walk by him like every day to get to work. Maria became smitten with Dominico. He was wealthy, and he was well off, and he could speak English, and he was interested. Maria was a little bit insecure about her social status and her inability to speak English, and a little insecure about her looks, and she saw Dominico as a man that was out of her league, so she was very surprised that he was so interested in her. So Maria started spending a lot of time with Dominico. She made sure to be able to stop and talk to him daily. She would leave early for work in the morning so she could stop at a shoe shine spot and talk with him before she went to work at the factory that day. In the evenings, Dominico would walk Maria home from, her job at the factory, and he would woo her and sweet talk her and talk about how he wanted to get married. He was just waiting for the right girl and make vague kind of, like maybe it's you, things like that. But he would never walk her all the way to her home. He would always stop just shy of her house because Maria and Dominico didn't really think that Maria's family would approve of him as a potential suitor. Even though Dominico was well off financially and was promising, to save her from a life of poverty, Maria's father, Michael, was a pretty overprotective guy, and she didn't think that her dad would approve of her being, you know, wined and dined by a shoe shiner. And in addition to that, I saw a couple of sources say that Dominico had a bad reputation. I couldn't find anything online that said exactly what this bad reputation was, but this was 125 years ago, so I mean, lost in translation, but there is some stuff we're going to learn a little later in the case that could shed some light on what this bad reputation might be, but we'll get there. Eventually, though, you know, they could only hide their relationship for so long, and Maria's father did find out, and he was like, you are never to see that man again. And I mean, okay, she is an adult. She was like in her 20s at this point, but sure, I guess do what your dad says. So she reluctantly agrees, but Dominico did not make it easy for Maria to forget about him. Dominico would show up at her factory days after work, sometimes before work, and just tell her how much he loved her and how he missed her and how he wanted to spend time with her. He was basically, you know, holding his radio up to her window like, please take me back. And she pushed back a little bit like, no, my dad says no. But eventually she did, you know, give in. She really liked him. She really cared about him. She thought he really cared about her. So she started to meet up with him again, and they would go on their little evening walks and their morning meetings. So one evening, Dominico asked Maria to come back with him to his boarding house. And I couldn't figure out if he lived there permanently or if this was being used as more of like a hotel type situation for that evening. But he asked Maria to go, and somehow he was able to get her to agree. Maybe she wanted to go. I really don't know. It's not clear. Now, what happened once Dominico and Maria got to the boarding house is debatable, but what is generally believed is that he made her a drink that was laced with something, she passed out, and he raped her. Hear me out. I am very well aware that there is an intense double standard when it comes to men murdering women versus women murdering men. Okay. Men are often typically and rightfully villainized for their crimes, despite any upbringing issues, any trauma that they may have experienced in their younger years, right? But when it comes to women, I often hear excuses and justifications for their actions. Now, I am trying not to do that because I do not like that double standard, but here's the thing. There's something ingrained in us that just kind of goes there, so it's something that I try to combat often and realize that I'm doing, notice in myself and improve upon, but I don't want it to seem like I'm telling you this part of the story to give Maria some sort of, you know, a pass for what she later does. I just want to tell you because it is part of the history and the story. Another version of this story is that instead of what we just discussed, she went up willingly and slept with him willingly due to his promise to marry her. Now, what happened, I really don't know. We never will know, but what is generally believed is that he gave her a drink that knocked her out and then had sex with her while she was unconscious. The following morning, Maria was mortified, you see, because this was 1895, and in 1895, if a woman has sex before marriage, she's considered a ruined woman, which, my God, how terrible is that? Like, I mean, I get it that, like, even in this day and age, we are getting a little bit better, but it's still more acceptable for a man to have, like, a high body count, right? But to be considered a ruined woman just because you... It's fucking dumb. I'm glad we've changed, but... Jesus Christ. It's just a really cruel, it's just cruel. It's cruel that a woman should have to feel that way because she slept with a guy that she liked. I don't know. Maria was like, okay, Dominico, we have now bed one another, so we need to get married. And Dominico was like, yeah, definitely, like, for sure. And he showed her his savings account, was like, look how much money I have to take care of you. And she's like, cool. But he kept putting the wedding off. For months, Maria and Dominico dated. She even ended up moving in. They got an apartment together and they lived together as man and wife. She took care of him. She was affectionate with him when he needed it. She cleaned his house. She cooked his food, but he kept pushing the marriage off, leaving it as a glimmering mirage in the distance that she could see, but she never got closer to, and it didn't really exist. After months of dating and living together and having a relationship together, Dominico dropped a bomb on Maria. Not only was he not going to marry her, he was already married to a woman in Italy with children and was leaving. He was leaving for Italy. He was leaving the US and Maria behind, and he had already bought a ticket for a ship to leave. But don't worry, he put Maria's mind at ease, okay? He let her know not to worry. He would find her a husband, okay? And he would tell the guy that she was a widow and they would get married, and then while this man was away at work, he would come and visit Maria. Jesus Christ. Can you even imagine that? No. So devastated, Maria went and told her mom everything that would happen, and naturally her mom was not freaking having it. So her mom went over to confront Dominico and was like, listen, you made my daughter a promise, you banged her, you ruined her, you need to marry her. And he took this whole interaction as sort of a joke and was like, yeah, I'll marry her if you give me a $200 dowry. And I looked it up, $200 in that time was like $6,000, and then just kind of laughed in her face because he knew her family didn't have that type of money. Not very nice. So shortly thereafter, in April of 1985, Dominico was out playing cards and drinking with a group of men, you know, just living the life, right? And he was sitting at this table joking with the guys at the table about the fight that he had had with Maria and the fight that he had had with Maria's mom, probably playing that crazy girl card. I can just picture it in my head, but he had no idea just how crazy Maria could be. So Maria enters the bar, which is already like, what? A lady going into a bar in the 1800s? Unheard of, right? So she goes into the bar, and there is Dominico at the card table, and she's like, okay, I'm gonna talk to him a little more, I'm gonna make one last ditch effort, because she really wanted to marry him. She was willing to even leave her family and go back to Italy just to be with this guy. Which, ladies, why? Why do we want men? What good do they do besides my wonderful, lovely husband? But like, really, I've already told him, if anything ever happened to him, I would never be in another relationship as long as I lived. Girl power, you don't need him. Maria, you didn't need him. So anyway, she asked him like, Dominico, are you sure you don't want to marry me? I'll do whatever it takes, right? And he was really cold to her. He didn't even like turn his back and acknowledge her. And he said, solo swini sposano, which translates to only pigs marry in Italian. He didn't even look at her when he said it, and he just started laughing after he said it. And Maria just sort of stood there for a second, like sort of looking at him blankly, before walking a little closer to him, pulling a straight razor from her pocket, putting her arm around his head like she was going to give him a hug, pulling his head back and slitting his throat ear to ear, leaving a giant gash that just started spurting blood. Maria didn't run, she just stood there kind of blankly as he stood up and ran outside, just bleeding. He ran outside, where he passed out in the street and uttered his last words, which were, I die before bleeding out in the street. Maria then went home to change out of her bloody clothes, but the police showed up soon thereafter. Maria was arrested and charged with first-degree murder and sent to serve her time until her trial at the New York Halls of Justice and House of Detention. This is a place that was given the charming little nickname of the Tombs. And this is where she was held until her trial date, which was less than 3 months after being arrested in July of 1895. So at the trial, all of the jurors were men, of course, because women weren't allowed to do anything, and none of them were Italian speaking, which ended up being something that people had a problem with later. But the case was pretty easy because Maria, even though she didn't speak English, she didn't dispute any of the facts of the case. I don't know if she could have, I don't know if they had a translator for her. It wasn't really clear. But they did allow Maria to give her own like broken account of what happened, like with the English that she did know, and all of the things that she said corroborated the witness statements of people who were there when she did it. And so it wasn't like her account of what happened was different than what they were saying. She like admitted to what she did, and plus a ton of people saw it. The judge in the trial urged the jury not to go easy on Maria just because she was a member of the softer sex. He said it was clear when Maria killed Dominico, she was in complete control of her faculties and was just like super pissed off that he wouldn't marry her, which is fair. It sounds like a crime of passion to me, like she just was like, you know, snapped, probably not premeditated at all, but she did bring the straight razor with her, so I don't know. The jury of 12 men deliberated for only 45 minutes before they came back with their verdict. Maria was guilty of first-degree murder, and she would be sent to Sing Sing prison to be put to death by electric chair. The electric chair. Maria was only the second female prisoner to ever be sent to Sing Sing prison. She was the first to be put on death row, and she would be the first prisoner to be killed by electric chair since it had been introduced as the method of the killing of the prisoners. But that execution, however, would never happen. Many people sided with Maria. Many people thought that the killing was just and that she wasn't given a fair trial. The governor of New York was inundated with like a shit ton of angry messages, and a bunch of men even offered to like marry Maria as a way to prove that she was innocent and that they believed that she was like a nice woman that couldn't have done this. And some people even said that women should not be responsible for upholding the law since they did not have any part in making these laws. People would gather outside the Sing Sing prison and they would sing this sort of like poem slash song, and this is the thing about this case that stuck in my head for my entire life. I have had this poem memorized for my, like, okay, not my entire life, but ever since high school. Like the first time I read it, it like stuck in my head and I've had it memorized since then. And I'm gonna recite it for you real quick. Swift as a flash, a glittering blade across his throat she drew. By you, she shrieked, I've been betrayed. This vengeance is my due. Behold her now, a wounded dove, a native of a clime, where hearts were melted soon with love and maddened soon with crime. I've had that in my head for 20 years. How old am I? Real quick, does anyone know what the statement native of a clime means? Because I don't even know what clime means. Is that still a word? I looked it up and honestly, I don't even think it's still a word and I don't really understand what it means in this context. And if you know, please let me know because that would solve a lot of long time mysteries for me. Thank you. Anyways, Maria ended up, due to public outcry, being moved back to the Tombs and out of Sing Sing prison while the courts tried to figure out what her fate would be. And she actually ended up being granted a retrial just because everybody pushed so hard for her to get a retrial, right? And her attorneys this time around were working for her pro bono because they thought it was outrageous that she had been found guilty in the first place for publicly murdering a man by slitting his throat ear to ear. How outrageous. Her attorneys this time around argued that she was not guilty because at the time of the murder, she was mentally unstable because she was suffering from physical epilepsy, which apparently, I don't know if it's still the case, but what they thought then was that if you had physical epilepsy, after doing something traumatic, you would automatically forget it, which to me doesn't really sound like it should be a real argument, because if that's the case, then at the time she did it, she was cool, but that was their argument. During the trial this time, Maria just sat there, dabbed at her eyes, and tried to maintain her composure, occasionally taking a pill to relax her from a female guard who had come with her from the Tombs, and the press referred to her as the Angel of the Tombs, okay? And she would occasionally take a pill from this lady to calm down. This time around, her attorneys had coached her on exactly how to act because they wanted her to seem like a little broken blossom. Excuse me, the quote was, pathetic broken blossom. How every woman wants to appear, obviously. This time around, the jury did believe that Maria was just the sweet, angelic, pure girl who had been raped and corrupted by Dominico, even though she did live with him for several months after the fact. They didn't really take that into consideration, and that really isn't foolproof evidence that the rape didn't happen anyway. But Maria did go on the stand and said that she was given some powerful drink and that when she woke up, she was ruined. She told the court that at times she would feel like she had a great machine in her head and that the pain was too strong that she could not bear it. And I do believe that her testimony helped a lot in her second trial. Now, to get rid of that pesky little, premeditation problem, Maria said that she did not take that blade with her that day with the intention to kill Dominico. She was going to ask him to marry her, and if he refused, she was going to kill herself. She was going to use the blade on herself and then throw her body into the river. And the jury clearly believes this because after 45 minutes, again, the jury came back with a new verdict, not guilty. Maria was considered not guilty, and she was so excited that she kissed the prosecutor, she kissed her attorneys, she kissed the Angel of the Tombs, and then she ran to the door to kiss each of the jurors on their way out, which you could never do now because then you'll catch COVID. Don't go around kissing a bunch of people. As far as life for Maria after that, not a ton is known what happened. We know that she did end up going on to marry a man named Francesco, and the two of them had a son who they named Frederick, and then her husband ended up moving back to Italy and leaving her and remarrying. And the last we heard, she was just by herself. But this was like, again, 100 years ago, so she's dead for sure, but we don't know what happened to her after that. And that, my friends, is the story of Maria, the scorned lover who took matters into her own hands. Ugh, I don't know. What do you guys think? I feel like there could really be conflicting feelings on this. I feel like it would be really, really easy for people to fall into that trap of feeling sympathetic for Maria, because Dominico didn't sound like a stand-up guy, but I am really against victim shaming, and if these roles were reversed, no one would have any sympathy for Dominico for killing Maria because she banged him and said that she was gonna marry him and then changed her mind. And don't get me wrong, I know that times were different. And I know that like shame was a big, big thing, but big enough for her to slit his throat in public? I mean, no. And don't get me wrong and don't get it twisted. If he did rape her, I'm very sympathetic to her. Don't get me wrong there. I am just preemptively defensive because I can just picture the comments now. I see them a lot when it comes to Jodi Arias. A lot of people are really sympathetic to her, and a lot of people give her, like, they justify what she did and it's because she was the softer sex, and it's because they say that Travis, which was her boyfriend that, spoiler alert, she murdered, drove her to kill him. But Jodi Arias is a monster, you know, like, you can't push someone to kill you because, okay, if you can believe that idea, then you have to also believe that a woman can push a man to the point that he murders her. And no one seems to be okay with that idea, right? I can think of a few cases where if you're saying that Maria or Jodi Arias were justified and were pushed into their crimes, that these men were pushed into their crimes, and this is a tightrope that I don't really want to walk on, and you shouldn't either. I am not down with that sickness. I am not down for people justifying some murders and not others, especially when the circumstances are pretty similar, but I digress. I got off on a tangent. But anyways, guys, that completes this video. I hope you enjoyed it and found it entertaining and informational, and it gave you all the information you could want concerning this case. Of course, let me know down below of any other cases you'd like to see me cover. I have an ongoing list. But every time you leave a suggestion, I add your suggestion to my list because I know you're full of good suggestions and good ideas, otherwise you would not be here. If you have not already had the pleasure, please make sure to join the Brat Pack by subscribing and ringing the bell because I put out new videos every week and I would love to hang out with you, specifically you. And if you haven't yet, you are more than welcome to follow me on Instagram. It's the same as my namesake here. It's pretty fun. I'm usually popping off in the Instagram stories for sure, polls, asking you questions about your favorite crimes or crimes that you're interested in, little sneak peeks on upcoming videos, things like that. So if that interests you, make sure to do that. And with all of that said, I just want to thank you for being here when you could literally be anywhere else in the world. That's tight, you're tight, this is tight, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye.